Move,
prison
move,
alarm
move!
screamed
Get to the
through
gate!
night at exactly 2:13
I see
a.m.
movement near Block D.
Red lights flashed across the walls of Blackstone Federal Prison, one of the most guarded prisons in the United States. Guards ran through dark hallways while steel doors slammed shut.
We have a
all
confirmed
around.
breach on level
Men
4.
shouted.
I need all
Radios
available units
crackled.
at cell block Gamma
Sirens
immediately.
echoed across the cold desert land outside the prison fences. Then came the message that made every officer freeze. Cell block D is empty. Warden Robert Hayes grabbed the radio with shaking hands. What do you mean empty? The guard on the other side sounded terrified. Marcus Reed is gone. For 3 long seconds, nobody spoke. Marcus Reed was not just another prisoner. He was the most watched inmate in Blackstone Prison. Cameras followed him every second. Guards checked his cell every hour. His steel door needed 2 keys and a fingerprint scanner just to open. And yet, somehow, he had vanished. The cameras outside his cell had stopped working for exactly 90 seconds. Only 90 seconds. When the cameras came back on, Marcus Reed was gone. No broken bars. No damaged door. No tunnel. Nothing. But that was not the worst part. Near Marcus's empty bed was a message written on the concrete wall in black ink. You never locked me in. The prison went into full lockdown. Helicopters filled the sky before sunrise. News reporters crowded outside the gates. Police cars raced down highways across 3 states. Every TV station in America began talking about the same thing. The prison escape that shocked the entire United States. But nobody knew the truth yet. Nobody knew Marcus Reed had been planning this for almost 10 years. And nobody knew someone inside the prison had secretly helped him. 3 months earlier, Marcus Reed sat quietly inside the prison library with a book open in front of him. Most prisoners stayed away from him. Some feared him. Others respected him. Marcus almost never spoke, and that made him even scarier. He was 38 years old, tall, calm, and always thinking. The guards called him the Ghost. Not because he escaped. Because he moved through prison without anyone noticing. Marcus spent his days reading books, cleaning tables, and staying out of trouble. He never fought. Never yelled. Never caused problems. That was exactly why people feared him. One rainy afternoon, a young prison guard named Ethan Cole walked into the library for the first time. Ethan had only worked at Blackstone for 2 weeks. He was nervous, thin, and eager to prove himself. Keep your eyes on Reed, another guard warned him. That guy's dangerous. Ethan looked over at Marcus, expecting some monster. Instead, Marcus simply turned a page in his book. That night, Ethan could not stop thinking about him. A week later, Ethan saw Marcus helping an older prisoner carry books across the hallway. Another day, Marcus stopped 2 inmates from fighting during lunch. None of it made sense. How can the most dangerous inmate here act so normal? Ethan asked another officer. The older officer laughed. That's exactly why he's dangerous. Still, Ethan became curious. One evening during patrol, he stopped outside Marcus's cell. You really never caused trouble? Ethan asked quietly. Marcus looked up slowly from his bunk. Trouble usually finds me first, he replied. That answer stayed in Ethan's mind for days. As weeks passed, Ethan spoke to Marcus more often. Small talks at first. Weather, books, food. Marcus always stayed calm. But sometimes Ethan caught him staring at the prison walls for a long time, almost like he was measuring them. One cold night, Ethan finally asked the question everybody wondered about. Did you really rob all those banks? Marcus smiled faintly. That's the story they told. Ethan frowned. So you're innocent? Marcus looked away. In prison, the truth stops mattering after a while. The hallway became silent. Far above them, thunder shook the prison windows. Then suddenly, every light inside cell block D went out. Darkness swallowed the hallway. Prisoners began shouting from inside their cells. Guards grabbed flashlights and radios. And in the middle of the confusion, Ethan heard something that made his blood run cold. A metal door opening somewhere deep inside the prison. The sound of the metal door echoed through the dark hallway. Ethan froze. For 1 second, the entire prison felt dead silent. Then the screaming started again. Prisoners banged their beds against the bars while guards shouted orders into their radios. Back up to cell block D. Get the emergency lights on. Lock every hallway. Ethan pulled out his flashlight with shaking hands. The thin beam cut through the darkness as he slowly moved forward. "Marcus," he whispered. No answer. The emergency lights finally flashed back on, turning the hallway red. Ethan looked toward Marcus Reed's cell. The door was open. His heart nearly stopped. Marcus stood just outside the cell, calm as ever. He was not running. He was not panicking. He simply stood there staring down the hallway. "How did you open that?" Ethan asked. Marcus looked at him carefully. "I didn't." Before Ethan could speak again, footsteps thundered toward them. 3 armed guards rushed into the hallway. "Get down!" one guard shouted at Marcus. Marcus slowly raised his hands. The guards shoved him back into his cell and slammed the steel door shut. One officer checked the lock twice while another searched the hallway. "Who opened this?" the lead guard barked. Nobody answered. The prison power returned fully a few minutes later, but the feeling inside Blackstone Prison had changed. Something was wrong. Everybody could feel it. The next morning, Warden Robert Hayes called an emergency meeting. "No prisoner leaves their cell unless approved," he ordered. "Every guard works double shifts until we figure out what happened." The room stayed tense. One officer cleared his throat. "Sir, there's something else." The warden frowned. "What?" The officer slid a photo across the table. It showed the security room from the night before. One of the camera monitors had a strange message typed across the screen. "He's already free." The room fell silent. Warden Hayes crushed the photo in his fist. Meanwhile, Marcus sat alone in his cell, eating breakfast like nothing had happened. Other prisoners whispered about him as guards walked past nervously. Even the toughest officers avoided looking directly at him. Later that afternoon, Ethan brought Marcus his lunch tray. "You know something," Ethan said quietly. Marcus looked up from his bed. "Everybody knows something. You scare people." Marcus gave a tiny smile. "Fear makes people easier to control." Ethan hesitated. "Did you open that door last night?" Marcus stared at him for several long seconds before answering. "No." For some reason, Ethan believed him. That was the part that frightened him most. 2 days later, investigators arrived from Washington, D.C. They searched every inch of the prison. They questioned guards for hours. They checked cameras, locks, fingerprints, and phone records. But nothing made sense. No sign of tampering. No damaged systems. No evidence. It was like the prison itself had opened Marcus's door. Then things became even stranger. A guard named Luis Ortega disappeared during his night shift. One moment he was watching cameras in Security Room 3. The next moment he was gone. His coffee was still warm. His radio sat on the desk. But Luis had vanished. The prison entered another lockdown. Dogs searched the yard. Officers checked every room. Still nothing. Late that night, Ethan walked nervously through the lower hallway carrying paperwork for the warden. He hated being down there alone. The lights flickered constantly, and the old pipes inside the walls made strange noises. As he turned a corner, he stopped suddenly. Someone was standing at the far end of the hallway. Marcus Reed. Ethan's eyes widened. "That's impossible," he whispered. Marcus was supposed to be locked inside his cell 3 floors above. But there he was, standing completely still under the flickering lights. Then Marcus spoke softly. "You should leave this prison, Ethan." Ethan stepped backward in fear. "How did you get out?" Marcus did not answer. Instead, he looked toward the ceiling cameras. "They're watching both of us now." A second later, the lights went out again. Ethan heard footsteps moving fast in the darkness. "Marcus!" he shouted. No answer. The lights flashed back on 3 seconds later. The hallway was empty. Marcus had disappeared. Then Ethan heard screaming echo from upstairs. He grabbed his radio. What happened? Static crackled loudly. Then a terrified voice shouted through the speaker. Officer down. Cell block D has been breached. And at that exact moment, every prison door inside Blackstone Federal Prison unlocked at the same time. The sound of hundreds of steel doors unlocking at once shook the entire prison. Prisoners rushed into the hallways, yelling and shoving past each other. Some screamed in excitement. Others looked terrified. Guards ran in every direction trying to stop the chaos. "Lock the blocks down," someone shouted over the radios. But nothing worked. The prison control system was dead. Ethan ran upstairs 2 steps at a time. His heart pounded so hard he could barely breathe. Smoke drifted through the air from a broken control panel near cell block D. Emergency lights flashed red across the walls like blood. When Ethan reached the top floor, he stopped in shock. Cells stood wide open. Prisoners filled the hallways. And near the center of the block, one guard lay unconscious on the floor. "Medic!" Ethan yelled. Another officer grabbed him roughly. "Forget him. Reed is missing." Ethan looked toward Marcus Reed's cell. Empty. The steel bed sat untouched. The sink still dripped water slowly onto the floor. But Marcus was gone. Sirens screamed outside the prison walls as state police arrived by the dozens. Searchlights swept across the desert around Blackstone Prison. Helicopters circled overhead. Inside the prison, fear spread faster than the riot. Because nobody understood how this was happening. Warden Hayes stormed through the control room, shouting at everyone, "Get the backup generators online now." A technician looked pale. "Sir, somebody destroyed the system from inside." "What do you mean inside?" The technician swallowed hard. "The attack came from a prison computer." Hayes slammed his fist against the desk. "That's impossible." But deep down, he knew it was not impossible anymore. Not with Marcus Reed involved. Outside cell block D, Ethan noticed something strange near the wall beside Marcus's cell. A small drawing. It had been scratched into the paint with something sharp. It was a map. Ethan stared at it closely. The lines looked like prison tunnels underneath the building. Then his eyes widened. One tunnel led beyond the prison fences. "Officer Cole!" someone shouted behind him. Ethan quickly stepped away before anyone else noticed the drawing. For the next 2 hours, guards slowly regained control of the prison. Most inmates were forced back into their cells. A few were injured during fights. 2 guards were taken to the hospital. But Marcus Reed was still missing. News stations across America exploded with the story. "The ghost of Blackstone has escaped. America's most secure prison breached. Nationwide manhunt underway." People everywhere watched helicopters flying above the prison on live television. Social media filled with theories, fear, and rumors. Some believed Marcus had outside help. Others believed he had been planning this for years. They were both right. Late that night, Ethan sat alone in the security office staring at the map he secretly copied onto paper. His hands trembled. If the tunnels were real, Marcus might already be miles away. But something else bothered him. Why had Marcus warned him to leave the prison? A sudden knock on the office door made Ethan jump. Warden Hayes entered slowly. "You've been spending time with Reed," the warden said coldly. Ethan stood quickly. "Only during patrols, sir." Hayes stepped closer. "You like him?" "No, sir." "You trust him?" Ethan hesitated too long. The warden's face hardened instantly. "Young officers make dangerous mistakes," Hayes said quietly. "Marcus Reed destroys people without touching them." Ethan stayed silent. Hayes placed a file onto the desk. "You should read this." After the warden left, Ethan opened the file carefully. Inside were old photographs, bank robberies, crime scenes, police reports. But one photo caught Ethan's attention immediately. It showed Marcus Reed standing beside another man many years earlier. The second man wore a prison guard uniform. Ethan flipped the photo over. Written on the back were 4 chilling words. "Still working inside Blackstone." Ethan's stomach tightened. Someone inside the prison had secretly been helping Marcus this whole time. Suddenly, the office lights flickered again. Ethan slowly looked toward the security monitors. Every screen turned black. Then words began appearing one letter at a time. "Look behind you." Ethan spun around in panic. Nobody was there. Then he heard breathing. Very close. A voice whispered from the darkness behind the office door. "You should not have opened that file." Before Ethan could move, the office lights shut off completely. Darkness swallowed the office. Ethan stumbled backward and slammed into the desk. His breathing became fast and uneven as he searched for his flashlight. "Who's there?" he shouted. No answer. Only silence. Then came the sound of slow footsteps outside the door. One step. Then another. Ethan finally grabbed his flashlight and turned it on. The beam shook badly in his hands as he pointed it toward the office entrance. The hallway outside was empty, but the door slowly creaked open by itself. Ethan's chest tightened. "Hello." Still nothing. He forced himself forward and stepped into the hallway. Red emergency lights flashed across the prison walls. Somewhere far away, prisoners yelled from inside their cells. The entire prison felt alive. Watching him, Ethan looked down and suddenly froze. A small black keycard lay on the floor outside the office door. There was no name on it. Only one word written in silver letters. Tunnels. Ethan quickly picked it up. At that exact moment, his radio exploded with static. Then a frightened voice shouted through it. "Officer Cole, report to the lower basement immediately." The signal cut off. Ethan stared at the keycard in his hand. His mind raced. Someone wanted him to find the tunnels. But why? And who had whispered outside his office? Far above the prison, thunder crashed loudly over the desert sky. Rain hammered against the prison walls as Ethan made his way downstairs alone. The lower basement of Blackstone Prison was old and rarely used. Most guards avoided it because the lights barely worked and the air smelled like rust and wet concrete. When Ethan reached the final stairwell, he noticed something strange immediately. One of the heavy steel doors was slightly open. That door was never supposed to be open. Ethan slowly pushed it wider. Cold air rushed from inside. His flashlight revealed a narrow underground hallway covered in pipes and dust. Water dripped from the ceiling. The deeper darkness ahead looked endless. Then Ethan saw footprints in the dirt. Fresh footprints. Someone had been there recently. He followed them carefully. The tunnel twisted beneath the prison like a maze. Some walls looked over 50 years old. Others seemed newer, almost repaired recently. Then Ethan heard voices ahead. He quickly turned off his flashlight and moved closer. Two men stood at the far end of the tunnel near a metal gate. One was Marcus Reed. The other wore a prison guard uniform. Ethan's eyes widened. It was Deputy Warden Thomas Greer. "You promised me a way out too," Greer whispered angrily. Marcus stayed calm. "And you'll get it. You said nobody would get hurt." "Nobody important did." Greer looked nervous. Sweat rolled down his forehead. "The FBI is coming tomorrow," he said. "If they discover the tunnels, we're finished." Marcus stepped closer to him slowly. "You're already finished." Greer frowned. "What's that supposed to mean?" Marcus smiled faintly. It was the first truly frightening smile Ethan had ever seen. Then Marcus looked directly into the darkness where Ethan was hiding. Ethan stopped breathing. For one terrible second, he thought Marcus could somehow see him. But Marcus turned back toward Greer again. "You should have left when you had the chance," Marcus said softly. Suddenly, the tunnel lights went out. Greer shouted in panic. Ethan backed away quickly in the darkness, trying not to make noise. Then came a loud crashing sound, followed by a scream. Then silence. The tunnel lights flickered back on. Greer was gone. Marcus stood alone beside the metal gate. And there was blood on his prison uniform sleeve. Ethan covered his mouth in shock. Marcus slowly looked around the tunnel. Then he spoke calmly into the silence. "I know you're there, Ethan." Ethan's blood turned cold. "You were always too curious." Marcus began walking slowly toward the darkness. Toward Ethan. Every step echoed through the tunnel. Ethan turned and ran. His shoes slammed against the wet floor as Marcus's footsteps followed behind him at a steady pace. Not fast. Not rushed. Almost relaxed. Ethan raced through the maze of tunnels until he finally reached the basement stairs. He shoved the steel door open and stumbled back into the prison hallway. He quickly slammed the door shut behind him. Then he heard something impossible. A soft chuckle from the other side of the steel door. Ethan backed away in fear. Suddenly, alarms exploded across the prison again. But this time, the message was worse than before. All units respond immediately. Perimeter breach confirmed. Ethan grabbed his radio. What happened? The terrified voice on the other side nearly screamed the answer. Marcus Reed just escaped from Blackstone Prison. Rain poured across the desert as police cars surrounded Blackstone Prison from every direction. Helicopters swept giant lights over the sand. Officers with dogs searched the roads outside the prison fences. News reporters stood in the storm speaking into cameras while all across America, millions of people watched the breaking story live. The prison escape that shocked the entire United States. Inside the prison, Ethan Cole could barely think straight. Marcus Reed had escaped. Deputy Warden Greer was missing. And somewhere beneath the prison, secret tunnels stretched for miles underground. Warden Hayes stormed through the command center shouting orders. Block every highway within 50 miles. An FBI agent stepped forward. We found a vehicle missing from the prison garage. Security cameras show it leaving 10 minutes ago. Who was driving? The agent looked grim. The cameras were disabled. Ethan suddenly spoke up. I know where Marcus is going. Everyone turned toward him. The room became silent. Ethan slowly placed the copied tunnel map onto the table. He planned this for years, Ethan explained. The tunnels lead outside the prison, but they also connect to an old mining road in the desert. The FBI agents studied the map carefully. One pointed to a small building far from the prison. What's this? Ethan swallowed hard. An abandoned train station. 30 minutes later, police trucks raced across the desert highway toward the old station. Rain slammed against the windows while thunder shook the night sky. Ethan sat beside Warden Hayes in silence. Finally, the warden looked at him. You trusted Reed. Ethan stared out the window. I thought there was still good in him. Hayes nodded sadly. That's how men like Marcus survive. They make people doubt what they know. Soon the convoy reached the abandoned station. It looked dead. Broken windows. Rotting wood. Old train tracks disappearing into darkness. FBI agents spread out carefully with flashlights and weapons ready. Ethan stepped inside the station behind them. The building smelled old and wet. Water dripped from the ceiling while wind howled through broken walls. Then Ethan noticed something near the ticket counter. Fresh, muddy footprints. He's here, Ethan whispered. Suddenly, a loud engine roared outside. Move! An FBI agent shouted. Everyone rushed toward the back exit just as a black truck burst through the storm outside the station. Marcus Reed sat behind the wheel. Police lights flashed wildly as officers chased the truck across the desert road. The dangerous pursuit raced through mud, rain, and darkness. Marcus drove fast, sliding around corners while police vehicles followed close behind. Inside one FBI truck, Ethan held tightly to the dashboard. Ahead of them, Marcus suddenly turned onto an old bridge crossing a deep canyon. The bridge looked ancient, weak, dangerous. He's trapped, one officer said. But Marcus kept driving. Halfway across the bridge, he stopped the truck. Police cars screeched to a halt behind him. Rain poured harder than ever. Marcus slowly stepped out of the vehicle with his hands visible. For the first time, Ethan saw him look tired. Not scary. Not powerful. Just tired. FBI agents surrounded him immediately. It's over, one shouted. Marcus looked at Ethan across the rain. You still believe I'm the villain? He asked quietly. Ethan frowned. People got hurt because of you. Marcus nodded once. Yes. And Blackstone helped create men like me. For a moment, nobody moved. Then Marcus slowly reached into his jacket. Officers raised their weapons instantly. But Marcus only pulled out a small recorder. Everything is on here, he said. Corrupt guards. Illegal deals. The truth about Blackstone. He tossed the recorder toward Ethan. Then something terrible happened. The old bridge suddenly cracked beneath Marcus's feet. Wood snapped loudly. Officers shouted in panic. Marcus grabbed the railing as the bridge began collapsing into the canyon below. Ethan rushed forward without thinking. He grabbed Marcus's arm tightly. For 1 second, they stared at each other while rain crashed around them. "You can still help people," Ethan shouted. Marcus looked down into the darkness below. Then he looked back at Ethan. A faint smile crossed his face. "Maybe this is the only good thing I can do." And before Ethan could stop him, Marcus let go. He disappeared into the storm below as the broken bridge shook violently. The canyon swallowed him completely. Police searched for days. But they never found Marcus Reed's body. The recorder exposed years of corruption inside Blackstone Prison. Several officials were arrested, including guards connected to secret crimes and hidden payments. Deputy Warden Greer's body was later discovered inside the tunnels beneath the prison. Blackstone Federal Prison was shut down less than a year later. And across the United States, people still argued about Marcus Reed. Was he a monster, a criminal, or a man created by a broken system? Nobody truly knew. But one thing was certain. The prison escape that shocked the entire United States would never be forgotten.